Whether you're launching a product on Amazon or you're an existing seller that has already been around for a while, keyword research for advertising can be one of the most daunting areas to take over. So, we're going to tackle that exactly today. My name is Noah Wickham. I'm sales director here at My Amazon Guy, and let's dig in on how you can find some new keywords to add to those campaigns. So, first and foremost, to get us started here, we're going to need two things. We are going to need to be on Amazon, the actual platform, not Seller Central, and we're going to need Helium. Specifically, we are going to want Cerebro from Helium. So, what do we do first and foremost? Well, if you're a brand new seller, this is kind of the guide for you. If you're a brand new seller, you should know what your top keyword is. That keyword should always be within your title. It usually is going to be a phrase, not just a singular keyword. So, we're going to look at something like this: fish oil for dogs. We can tell fairly quickly that this is going to be the top keyword. So, we're going to take that. And then we're going to, as you can see, throw it into our top search bar up here. Just the exact top term that you can imagine for your product. Now, I already did that, so let's come on over here. You can see we get a bunch of different products coming up. The purpose of this, let's not choose the sponsor just yet. We want our top products. We want to know exactly what these people are going after. So we're going to grab all of the ASINs from this. You can grab the ASIN in two different places. Either one up in the URL, if you know where to look for it, or you can scroll all the way down to the actual product information and product details, and the ASIN should be right here. So let's grab that, and we're going to throw that right into Cerebro. And I'm going to grab it from the URL for the rest of them and throw it in there as well. Quite simple. You don't need to do more than a few products when you're doing this either. That's one thing I do want to make very clear. You can do up to 10. I like to do 3 or 4 products, sometimes 5 or 6 if I'm not seeing a lot. But I like to get the keywords from that. So we'll get the keywords. It's going to fetch the data here, which will take just a second. And once we have that data, we can scroll on down. Now I have my columns filtered specifically for this. You can do similar columns or columns that make sense for you. I'm going to move this over slightly so you guys can see position rank as well. Let's move that right there so we can see sponsored and position rank. There we go. So when we're looking at any keyword, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. The first one to keep in mind for all of our keywords is that we want high search volume to start. Not only do we want high search volume, we also want to have relevant keywords. Relevancy comes from, again, things like our position rank versus our sponsored rank. So you can see immediately what we can do is go to position rank. We're just going to do 1 to 50. Some people like to do 1 to 10, 1 to 20, 1 to 25. I like to do 1 to 50 just to get a nice broad amount of keywords. So we do 1 to 50, and then we are going to go search volume top down. So you can see immediately position rank on average here is going to be 22 for dog on these. Dog is very clearly a very high-end keyword. So what is the purpose of doing this? Well, a couple of things. We're looking first and foremost for what we can either do an exact targeting or a broad targeting on. For broad targeting campaigns, we are always going to want to do the actual keywords. So keywords containing, and we will look for the actual keywords here. Word count. Here we go. You want to go over to your word count. It's on the far right for me. I should probably remove a bunch of these, but word count 1 to 4. Broad should usually have no more than 4 total terms within it. So we'll apply that filter. And you can see here, we have dog, we have liquid collagen for dogs, we have cat, salmon oil for dogs. And you can see a lot of these are sponsored ASINs that they're not very high on, but the actual position rank is quite high. The purpose that we're looking for here is a healthy mix between the two. So you can usually see whenever something is a high position rank, that they likely also have some form of advertising in a very broad sense. This is going to be very cheap, low target advertising. These are going to be keywords that not necessarily are the best, but not necessarily the worst. Now, when you want to get more exact, I like to do a couple of things particularly. First and foremost, we're going to look up here for search volume, and you're going to do a search volume of 1 to 5,000. So these are going to be more in the line of high relevancy keywords. And then from a word count, you are going to do a minimum of 4. So this is going to be some of our exact long tail keywords that we're targeting from both a starter and a long tail perspective. So our search volume here, you can see Zesty Paws Salmon Oil. So you remember that was actually one of the first ones that we went on. So you can see immediately that even the other competitors are trying to target this product. Great example, we have a couple other different competitors here. So this is how essentially you start the process of understanding where to find new keywords. I like to go from a large search volume and do a healthy mix between them. You should typically do only 1 to 2 different types of very large search volume keywords to start within a one campaign. You also need to check out your suggested bids. So this will depend heavily on what your overall budget is. So for instance, if your overall budget is something relatively small, let's say only $2,000, and you are going to start on this type of product, well, you can typically change how your budget is going to work. So we can actually see over here, we can do something with suggested bids. So let's say that we want to do between 50 cents, or even better, we don't want a minimum, but we want a maximum of $1.50. Seems reasonable as a cost per click generally. So we'll do a maximum of $1.50. And now we get to see all of the different keywords that they are currently ranking on and even advertising against. And we can do sponsored to have the highest. So what is it they're truly actually ranking on? Well, you can see a lot of their sponsors are going to be much closer in the exact category than in the broad category. Again, we can also do this for the actual broad, where we will do a max count of 4 for our overall. So we'll see 4 there, and you can see much more of what it is they're targeting, but the search volume does not match. This is where I want to make a very important distinction when you are doing your PPC keyword research. And that is that just because something has little competition, just because you can advertise against it, doesn't mean necessarily you're going to want to. Especially when you're just starting out, or even existing campaigns, doing a lot of very low search volume keywords can seem enticing because usually they are going to be very inexpensive for you to target, even from an exact perspective. But even more so than that, it's going to be a big problem for you because you're not actually going to get impression share off of these, especially if you're targeting them exactly. Now, for a broad campaign, it's a little bit easier to target some of these. Again, a lot of these seem to be much less in what we're actually going for. So whenever we're looking at any of these, we can see something such as Vital Pet Life, right? Salmon oil pills. These are much closer, but they still have a relatively low search volume, which is why we want to start from a larger search volume perspective for any of the ones that we are actually going after. So you can see things like dog accessories boy, cat enrichment. These are great broad terms. They are not great exact terms because they have very low relevancy. And this is why you'll see things where they have actually sponsored ranks very, very high, because these brands understand that, in the sense that they are likely not trying to directly target any one of these keywords from an exact standpoint. And this brings into the function the idea of using a broad campaign versus an exact campaign, how you use that with your keyword targeting. So if you are just starting on Amazon, this is the perfect way to go about trying to figure out some new keywords to actually go after for your campaigns. Now, if you are not just starting on Amazon, you have an active product of some kind, we can also go into that. So if you have an active product, it actually makes this entire process a lot easier. The reason that it makes the entire process a lot easier is because, as you remember, we actually use this one as our use case. So we're going to take the ASIN for this, and we can come on back over to Cerebro. We will throw that ASIN in here. There we go. And we're going to get keywords for this specific ASIN. The reason that this is a lot easier is because you have sales history. So you can actually utilize this exact same strategy, but instead of looking at direct competitors for your only use case, you're essentially looking at yourself. So again, we can see here all of the different keywords that they are ranking on organically, they are ranking on paid as well, and how we can actually start to utilize them. What is our highest search volume that we are currently not actually ranking on in some capacity? This is where we can start to try and gain some market share. So you can see here, one where we have 24 organic, 8 sponsored, 4 fish oil. So this is the exact same principle. It's just utilized on your own product. So whether or not you are a brand new product or you are an existing product, you still use essentially the same way to find long-term keywords to add into your campaigns. Now, this does not account for things such as extremely high relevancy, nor does it account for things such as an exact phrase match, but it does help when you're trying to find longer term keyword or long tail keywords that you want to add into campaigns to try and bolster your overall campaign performance. So if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more, and we will see you next time.